Let's talk about what happens when you want to limit the number of calls to your API. At this point, you may be asking, isn't an increase in API traffic a good thing? While you are correct, there are some situations where you may want to limit or block the amount of calls coming into your API proxy. Maybe you want to protect against malicious service attacks that will bring down your system. Maybe your APIs have a limited number of free calls before requiring a paid subscription. These are just a few scenarios where traffic management plays a key role. So let's spend the next few minutes to cover the traffic management policies that are provided to you in Apigee Edge. Depending on how much traffic your backend systems can accommodate, a sudden spike in traffic, whether it be legitimate or malicious, can risk taking down your entire environment. The spike arrest policy will allow you to protect against severe traffic spikes by controlling the number of requests by the second and the minute. This policy is usually used in the pre-flow since you want your API proxy to check for this before executing any of the other policies. Simply add this policy to your API proxy and configure it to the threshold you want. Next, let's look at the scenario where you may want to limit the number of API calls over a certain period of time. If you monetize your APIs, you may have an amount of free calls per month before you start charging the user. In these type of scenarios, the quota policy is for you. With the quota policy, you can limit the number of requests over a period of time. This limit can be applied to everyone or configured to apply to a specific API product or developer. If at any time you want to reset the quota, there's a policy for that too. Once again, you should use this policy in the pre-flow. When it comes to concurrent connections from Apigee Edge to your backend system, you can use the concurrent rate limiting policy to limit the number of connections to ensure stability. While this is not typically used, it is still available should you need it. When applying this policy to your API proxy, be sure that it is present in both the request and the response flows in the target endpoint. The policies we discussed up until now focused on limiting the number of calls or connections to and from Apigee Edge. But what about increasing the performance? One way to improve performance of your APIs is to use response caches. The response cache policy will allow you to cache the whole HTTP response from the backend and retrieve it directly rather than making another call. You would typically use this if you don't suspect the backend response to change much in a given period. This policy is typically used in GET calls when you are retrieving information and should be attached to both the request and the response flows in your API proxy. Caching policies don't just end with response caches. Apigee Edge also provides out-of-the-box policies for lookup, populate, and invalidate caches. With these policies, you can cache specific pieces of data within your API proxy itself and use them for subsequent calls. Please refer to the documentation for additional details on how to use each one. We hope you found this quick walkthrough of traffic management policies that come with Apigee Edge useful. We strongly encourage you to play around with these policies yourself, as you'll find them to be very straightforward and easy to configure.